Hello all my crafty people, and welcome back to the Lone Star Crafter. I'm Rachel, and today I'm doing another video all about machine embroidery. My first video I posted about a month ago went really well. It was very popular and I got a lot of feedback on it. So I wanted to do a more general video because machine embroidery does get really specific when you start getting into the particular machines and things like that. So today I wanted to do a video about 5 things you should know about machine embroidery before you buy a machine. And so the first one is going to be, this is not a cheap hobby. It really isn't. And a lot of people will go to a sewing store, a sewing machine dealership, and they'll look at these machines and they'll go, oh, this big top of the line thing, it's a big monstrous machine, has this giant hoop. They go, oh, that's probably like $5,000, thinking that that's very expensive, which I don't disagree with. That is very expensive. But those machines tend to run like $18,000 to $20,000 retail. Of course, you probably don't ever end up spending that much. But so not only do you have the cost of the machine, especially if you want a nice one, but you also have the cost of the materials. Machine embroidery requires a lot of just basic supplies before you even get to the machine. You're looking at things like stabilizer. That's the kind of fabric material that helps support whatever fabric you're embroidering on. You have embroidery needles. You're going to go through a lot of needles, especially if you're doing really stitch heavy designs or if you really fall in love with embroidery and do it a lot. You're going to have to change your needle almost after every single project, depending on how big it is. Thread. And you want good quality thread. You don't want to be buying the cheap Coats and Clark stuff from, Hobby Lobby or Joann's. You want to make sure you're investing in a nice spool of thread. It's going to be a 40-weight polyester or rayon. And again, if you really get into this, you're going to be going through a lot of thread. So stabilizer, needles, thread itself, you want to make sure you have some practice fabric. You want to be able to test out a design, especially if you're going to work with something other than cotton. If you're going to be working with a knit, or you're going to be doing, tea towels or regular towels. Terry cloth towels are a very popular embroidery project. You need to practice first. You need to stitch out the design first to make sure that the tension's correct, that the type of stabilizer you're using is correct. So that adds up really quickly, especially when you really get into it. And then, of course, like I said, the machine itself. I recommend spending at least $1,500 on a machine, and we'll get more into that in the next section, or in a couple sections from now. And then, of course, you have maintenance on the machine, which a lot of people don't think about. They go, oh, I spent, say you spend $3,000 on an embroidery machine. That's probably a decent machine. And that's quite a bit of money. It really is. Especially if you're just doing it for a hobby, just for yourself. There's so much wear and tear that goes into the machine that you want to make sure that you're maintaining it, and you want to make sure, especially with the computerization part of it, you want to make sure you're taking it to a certified technician who knows what they're doing, who has a good reputation, and things like that. So if you're looking for like a really cheap hobby to kind of just like do on the side, here and there, this and that, there's ways to do machine embroidery cheaply. Like, of course, if you just, spend that initial cost, then, you'll have like a lot of supplies for a long time, especially if you don't do it very often. But there are definitely less expensive hobbies out there. Probably hand embroidery would be a better alternative to machine embroidery. Okay, so number 2 on my list is this machine embroidery is its own hobby in and of itself. So a lot of sewers want to do machine embroidery to add embellishments to things. They want to sort of elevate their projects and their sewing and things like that. And while you can do that, that is definitely an option. And it's easier if you're a quilter and you're just working with cotton fabric and just adding some, embroidery here and there. You can kind of just dabble in it. But there is so much that goes into machine embroidery. There are so many different elements. Like I said, the stabilizer, the needles, the thread, the fabric you're working on, the machine itself that you have, How powerful is that motor? How old is the machine? What kind of design is it? Is it built in? Did you purchase it? You have to take all of these factors in whenever you're doing an embroidery project. And a lot of people go, really? Why would I need to know that? Because it's a very technical thing. Machine embroidery is way more technical than it is creative, especially if you're just using designs built into the machine, or if you're purchasing designs offline or from, like Etsy or something like that. You really need to know how to set up the machine for success for any embroidery project, especially if you're going to be getting into adding embroidery to garments, to knit fabrics, to a silky fabric, to linens. I mean, there's so many different types of garment fabrics, and it's not that it's impossible or that it's even particularly difficult. But if you're a sewer, you've been sewing for a long time and you want to get into machine embroidery and you just want to do it a little bit, that there's no such thing. There really isn't. You have to learn how to do machine embroidery on its own. You have to understand how machine embroidery works, how to set it up, and everything like that. And then you'll be able to really easily translate that to different sewing projects. And that was something I had a difficult time with. So I'd been sewing for probably like four or 5 years. And then I started working at a sewing machine store where they had embroidery machines. And it never even occurred to me that there was machine embroidery. So I have only been doing machine embroidery for about three to 3.5 years. And I learned something new almost every single day with it. It's a lot more complicated than people think. They think you just put a hoop on and hit go and then you're done. And then once you know what you're doing, sure, it is really simple. It can be really simple like that. But just know that if you really want to do machine embroidery beyond just adding letters or beyond just making quilt labels, it's its own hobby in and of itself. And you really need to take the time to learn it and learn how to set it up for a really good success. But once you learn it though, it's a lot of fun, and it is easy to add embroidery to all kinds of different projects. All right, so number 3 on my list on things you should know before buying an embroidery machine is you really do need to be a little bit comfortable with computers. And I'm not saying you have to know how to program a computer, you don't have to, go to IT school or anything like that. But you should know what a flash drive is. You should know how to transfer files. You should know how to unzip files. And you should understand what converting is. If any of those things that I just said, you're like, what? That is so, what are you saying? If I sound like I'm speaking a foreign language, you are going to have another hurdle to jump when it comes to learning machine embroidery. Now, granted, you can easily just go to a machine, pick a design, hit go. But most people, I would say 95% of people 95% of people are going to explore other embroidery design options, is what I should say. Because there's only so many designs built on any of the machines. Even when you spend $20,000 on a machine, there's only so many designs. And sometimes there's some designs that you don't like. That's just all there is to it. A designer created them. You're not going to love all 1,000 designs that are built into your embroidery machine. That's just how it is. And there are so many cute embroidery designs out there on the market. So many different websites that you can go to. So many different designers, independent people, major companies, and things like that. So you are 95% likely to go, I want to buy a different designer. Ooh, I saw this design on Etsy and I really want to get it. And so it can be easy if you have basic computer skills. So going online, purchasing design, understanding that you're going to have to download it, understand that you may have to unzip a folder. If you have embroidery software, you may have to convert something. That might be something that comes up. And so just having that understanding of how to download a file, put it on a flash drive, and bring it over to a computer. That seems silly, or like, well, doesn't everybody know how to do that? No, not everybody knows how to do that. Especially if you are one of the people who are of the average age who buy an expensive embroidery machine. That's just how it is. You're at the retirement age maybe, and you really want to get into machine embroidery. Just know that if you want to move beyond what's built into the machine, you're going to have some basic computer skills. So I just want to throw that out there. Also, if you want to create your own designs and you want to get into creating your own embroidery designs, that is called embroidery software. And yes, there are free things like Embrilliance out there available to people. I know Janome has some like basic free digitizing software and things like that. But if you want to take like your granddaughter's drawing or something like that, unless there's a couple of machines out on the market from particular brands, I think Baby Lock and Brother, that have a built-in camera. They'll scan the image in, depending on what, like a coloring book beige kind of style drawing, and then those machines can do basic digitizing. If you're not investing in a top-of-the-line embroidery machine and you're just kind of starting off at a mid-level machine, but you want to be able to create your own designs or digitize designs for other people, you're going to have to understand not only embroidery software, but computers in general. So that is something to be aware of depending on what level you want to get at, or what level you want to get to in machine embroidery. Okay, so number 4 is don't buy a cheap machine and don't buy a used machine. And obviously there are definitely exceptions to this rule. If you know the person who owned the machine prior, they've only had it for 2 years, barely used it, they're a good friend of yours, they keep up with it, this and that, then yeah, sure, depending on what they're asking for a price, that might be a really good deal for you. But please, please don't buy a used machine off of eBay without doing research. I've seen it so many times where someone will bring an embroidery machine in. And I'll be like, oh, how long have you had it? They're like, oh, I just bought it off of Facebook. And I go, this is a 20-year-old embroidery machine. Oh, is that bad? Well, when's the last time you bought a new cell phone? Like, you just bought a new cell phone maybe 2 years ago? Think about how fast technology has moved in the last 20 years. We're in 2021 right now. In 2000, like, most people didn't own a cell phone. And if they did, it was a flip phone. Okay, we started off, that was 20 years ago. So think about how far machine embroidery has come in that time. And people think like, well, it had all the discs and this and that with it. It had the arm, it had all these accessories. So I thought it was a really good deal. The discs they're talking about are like floppy disks. That's how embroidery machines used to work. They used to have these cards that you have to stick into the machines. You can't get those cards anymore, and you can't get the things that convert files to those cards. The technology is outdated. It is. And is it annoying that technology moves really quickly, or having to constantly buy new pieces of whatever it is? Yeah, sure, but if it seems like too good of a deal, if it's on Facebook Marketplace and it's like a Bernina Aurora 140 or something like that, please don't buy it unless it's like $10 and it comes with all that stuff. And even then, to me, it's not worth it because you're not going to be able to use your computer. You're not going to be able to buy new designs for it. You're going to be stuck with what it is as it is. Now, if you just want to kind of play around with it and you like vintage machines, that's a different story. On the other side of that is like buying a cheap machine. Now, if you don't know if you want to do machine embroidery and you just want to be able to do like some quilt labels or a letter, someone's name here and there, yes, you can go to Walmart and buy a cheap Brother sewing and embroidery machine. It can get through some projects and things like that. But you are going to be very limited in what it can do. And more than likely, you're only going to be able to do like a 4x4 hoop. Was it like that? Yeah, 4x4 hoop like that. If you know that you want to do machine embroidery and you want to be able to add it to different stuff, you really want to get into it, I recommend spending at least $1,500. That's just all there is to it. And just know, so $1,500 for the machine, another $500, if that, $300 to $500 on supplies. And I mean, $300 to $500 on supplies for machine embroidery will last you years. It depends on how much you want to do. Actually, probably, because the thread adds up. And if you want to be able to do lots of color changes and things like that, get like a nice set or something like that. Okay. Another kind of caveat to that, the whole like don't buy a cheap machine or used machine. If you're going to buy a machine at all, a new machine, $1,500. Make sure you also have money set aside for some sort of service agreement. If you're going through, go through a dealership and make sure that they have certified technicians either on site or close by. And make sure that, if something goes wrong, they're going to support you, that they're going to educate you, but also make sure that they have some sort of service agreement that you can purchase for your machine. And I don't care how often you're going to be using your embroidery machine. If you use it once a week or 3 times a week or every day, you should have a service maintenance agreement of some sort, either a protection plan or whatever, that says that you can bring in your machine anytime something goes wrong, and that it's going to cover parts and labor, so servicing the machine, because there is a lot of wear and tear on embroidery machines. The needle's going up and down. That's all it's doing. And then you have another component to that. You have an arm that's moving the hoop. Usually, it moves the hoop around. So that right there, that piece of equipment, that gets a lot of use. The needle itself is going up and down so many times. There's, fibers from the fabric that get in underneath the needle plate. Threads will snap and get caught up in the upper area of your machine. And so if you want to do machine embroidery, you should have some sort of plan on that machine to cover yourself for at least a couple of years, because that's going to let you kind of explore machine embroidery without that fear, like, oh no, I'm going to break it. Because that's horrible. When someone buys an embroidery machine, they leave it in a box for like 3 years and then pull it out, and then something goes wrong with it because it's been sitting in a box for 3 years and it has moving parts that haven't been moving. And then they go, well, it's brand new. No, it's not brand new. It's 3 years old. You just never used it. And so now the poor thing, you're up a creek without a paddle because you were so scared to break the machine that you ended up breaking the machine. So don't buy a used machine on eBay without doing extensive research. I would recommend, if you're going to buy a used machine, buy from someone you actually know in real life, either through like a quilt guild, a sewing guild of some sort of creative group, friends, family, whatever. Buy through a dealership. Spend at least $1,500 because you're going to be able to do a lot with a machine at that level without having to need a new one anytime soon. And then make sure that you get some sort of protection plan or service maintenance agreement so that you can just use your embroidery machine as much as you want to without having to be worried about breaking it or something like that. Okay, so number 5, last thing on my list. Now, this is probably the biggest one that people are shocked by, and it's the fact that there is actually a difference between a commercial embroidery machine and a household embroidery machine. And what I mean by that is, again, someone walking into a sewing machine store and they see this $20,000 machine, they go, I can't just buy that for a hobby. I need to start a business with that. Yeah, you would have to make money off of that machine. Yes and no. You are not going to be able to run a household embroidery machine 8 hours a day. You're not going to be able to do it. You are not going to be able to make 100 shirts a week with it, or you're not going to be able to do 5 baseball hats in a week. You are not going to be able to start an actual business with a household embroidery machine. Now, there's 2 sides to that. Now, if you have a really nice sewing, embroidery machine, and you make a couple of shirts here and there, maybe you make some patches for people, you make some, add some embroidery to stuff here and there, and you're making money off of it, that's fine. The problem is if you use a household machine commercially, meaning like 8 to 12 hours a day, 5 to 7 days a week, you are going to void out your warranty, because when you take it to the technician, or if you're trying to use your service maintenance agreement or whatever it is, the technician knows how many stitches are on your machine. Just like when you take a car into a mechanic, they know how many miles are on that car. A technician's going to see the wear and tear in certain areas and go, this person's using this machine for a full-time business. And so at that point, you might void out your warranty. You may even void out your service maintenance agreement, and your poor machine is sick and you need it to get fixed and things like that. And you have to also think about it. On a household machine, you have one needle. on a commercial machine, a commercial embroidery machine or an industrial embroidery machine, usually has anywhere from 6 to like 30 needles on the machine. It's usually a standalone thing that sits on a cabinet of some sort, sits on a table or something like that. And all it is needles. You have thread on top, you have needles that come down, and then you have a free arm that allows you to put almost anything on the head to be embroidered. So if you want to do machine embroidery for a business, you really need to ask yourself, how much are you going to do? If you're going to be doing this, almost every day of the week, 5 days a week or something like that, you need a commercial machine. You need an industrial machine. That's all there is to it. And spending $20,000 on a household machine, you would think that it could do it commercially. I understand the thinking. I don't disagree with the thought. If you're spending that much money on a machine, can I use it to sell stuff? No, because it's literally designed for people who really love to sew and embroider. It's designed for people who've been saving up for 5 years, 10 years. It's for people who have really good credit and don't mind, paying it off. That's all it is to it. It's just a really nice sewing or a really nice embroidery machine. It's like people who buy, Lamborghinis and aren't racers. They're not race car drivers. That's just how it is. And so if you want to start a business, you really need to buy a commercial machine because it's going to be easier. It's going to be so much easier to do production style embroidery, business style embroidery with a multi-needle machine because you can set 10, 20 colors up there, tell the machine which needle is what color, and then you can do 10 of the same patch, all in a row without having to change the thread. And that's the big thing with a household machine. You're the one changing the thread. Whether you have a fully automatic needle threader, a kind of semi-automatic needle threader, every time this machine stops and asks for a color change, you're changing the color. Whereas with a commercial machine, the machine itself already knows what needle to go to, and it's going to automatically change that color out for you. It's also going to be easier to embroider things that are already sewn together. And so I'm talking like pants, jackets, hoodies, baseball hats, things like that are going to be so much easier to do on an embroidery machine because instead of having a completely flat long bed and the hoop, and on an embroidery machine, the hoop just kind of sits on, like here's the bed of the machine, here's your hoop. The hoop sits here and then, here's the needle going in and out of the fabric. You need a flat piece of fabric. That's the easiest thing to embroider on a household machine. Whereas on a commercial machine, here's the arm. It's just a free arm. And so yes, you can put your hoop on top of here, but you could also have something that's already sewn like this. And it's going to be able to, move freely under here while the needle is going in and out right here. So commercial machine is going to give you a lot more versatility in what you can embroider on, how easy it is to embroider on it. And then, of course, the machine itself is built for that use. It's designed to use for business purposes and things like that. So, you can get in on a commercial embroidery machine for probably about $12,000 to $15,000. That's considered an investment, and that's something you can write off on your taxes every year. You can get, make sure that there's a technician available to work on your machine. A lot of places might even offer like in-home servicing and things like that. And so just be aware of that. Just because you go to a sewing machine store and they have a $20,000 sewing and embroidery machine out on the floor, it doesn't mean that you can do a full-time business with that machine. Now, can you kind of get started and dabble in it a little bit, do some stuff here and there? Yeah, of course. You just don't want to be putting so many stitches on your machine that when you take it in for service, a technician goes, this is not covered under warranty. You're abusing this poor little machine. And, it would suck to spend $20,000 on an embroidery machine and then, something that goes wrong under like a manufacturer warranty, you're no longer covered because you've been using it improperly. So there's definitely a lot of benefits to going to a commercial machine if you want to really start your own custom embroidery business. And there are tons of videos on YouTube from people who actually do it as a full-time business. So definitely, you know, just explore that and see if that's something that's going to be right for you. But maybe if you just kind of want to dabble in it, you're not sure if you want to do a business, starting off with a decent embroidery machine will definitely help you with that. So, all right, y'all, that's everything I had. Those are my top 5 things on what you need to know about machine embroidery before you actually buy a machine. I will be doing more videos about machine embroidery in general, on like how to hoop different fabrics, what kinds of stabilizers are out there, why it's important to change your needle and stuff like that. So if you like this video and you want to see more, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe down below. And I will be posting more embroidery videos soon. Have a crafty day.